This time, instead of going into Q&A, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience on vacation.
Ooh!
I went to Guadeloupe, which is an island in the West Indies. It's French-owned and French-speaking. They speak Creole and French there. No English unless somebody's from Montreal. And so it's very difficult to find anybody to speak English. I don't speak French well enough to have any conversation about nutrition. So that's why I went there. And I would be assured to have a vacation. And it worked. It was a fun time. One day I went to go hiking on Guadeloupe. It's like two islands butted together. And one is called the Grand Territory, Grand Tar, and the other is called Bastard. So every time they say it, it's like somebody saying bastard. But it's Bassetterre, but in French it's called Bastard. But it sounds like Bastard when they hit that hard, gravelly R. So it's Bastard and Grand Tar. And the Grand Tar is very hilly. Lots of hills and valleys. And so I drove all through that, and it was nice. The other island is where the volcano is. It's not an active volcano. And jungle all around it. And mainly on these two islands, the Grand Tar is mainly sugarcane. The other island is mainly vanilla beans, coffee, and bananas. So it's heavily farmed, but it's gorgeous jungle. It's so thick. So I was going to go on the natural, the human path, which is, just cut through. It's pretty, it's rocky and messy. And I went with these rubber tongs and in my shorts and a t-shirt. And I, was going along this road, and I just didn't want to be on the road anymore. So I started going to the animal trails. And that's rough because you have to go under, you have to climb over these roots of the big tall ceiling and down, crawling over them. It was wonderful. I mean, I actually spent about 5 hours climbing through the jungle trying to find the waterfalls. We finally got to them, and there were a couple people on the diet who were professional rock climbers, and they took me they forced me to go rock climbing. So I went. It was okay, but I never, I was always afraid of heights, and since the stomach surgery, I would always get nauseous from heights. Something you don't want to do with rock climbing, but something came over me, and I climbed all the way down the falls, and then all the way down the lower falls, all the way, rock climbing all the way. It was phenomenal. With these tongs. Wow. And how many times, they broke, they were well-made tongs, but, they're actual rubber. Never find anything like that in the United States. When broken tongs before they're broken, and that's it. And I had one of those Swiss Army knives that has 28 tools in it. So I was able to punch it back through. And I only banged up my nails, broke up my nails. I have a few cuts on my toes. But it was pretty easy. It was pretty good. And I was just so amazed that I was able to do that. And then the last day I was there, they have a thing called cirque, which means circus. And they have a trapeze. I turned 56 in 2 months. And I get up there on the trapeze, climbing up about 30-some feet high. And, you pull the trapeze over, and you've got to lean way over, And I'm nauseous as hell, so I say, I got up there, and I was very nauseous, and I said, I'm going to have to stand here until the nausea goes. If nausea doesn't go, I'm just jumping then. I'm not doing any, trapeze. So waited about 5-6 minutes, and nausea went away. And then, of course, I had to hang out and grab the thing, and nausea came back. So I stood there for a good 2 minutes. And, they had a bungee cord strapped on the sides. So it couldn't be any terrible accident. So then I did these, went around, brought my legs around, got on the trapeze, and did all that. Came around, got back up again, came around and did flips. That's heavily. So, and they were amazed. I was 56 years old, don't even exercise. So anyway, it was pretty good, you know, for a person who doesn't exercise. I felt pretty good about it. The only thing that was a rude awakening is that it's right near the equator, and it's only about 500 miles north of Venezuela. And it was very humid, and I was perspiring like crazy, you know, when I was going through the jungle. And of course, I was drinking the water coming from the stream. And there are these signs, I mean, photographic signs showing this snail with this parasite that goes here to the man and what it causes in the man. They say, don't drink this water, don't drink this water. Well, that's just water I want to drink. You know? It's a parasite. Well, it didn't seem to get any. I drank probably 2 liters of that water. But I had to drink more water. I drank probably 4 liters in the last 3 days that I was there. And that's enough. So I drank a whole year here. Or at least through the fall and winter. So that vegetable juice was very important. So the next time I go on a trip like that, I will definitely take my juicer with me. So I won't have to drink the water, because at the end of that, when I got home, I found my teeth very sensitive. Other people won't really react as much as I do, because I normally don't drink water, but water is very leaching, like I said. And I took lots of cream with me. I couldn't get any red meat. I had little lamb chops a couple of times, but there's no red meat on that island unless it's frozen. Fresh fish every day right off the dock. And I mean, I had it in the rental car, just not even wrapped tightly, not in a jar, just in this plastic bag, sitting in the back, really hot. Tastes just as fresh in 2-3 days. Doesn't even smell. Fresh. I mean, I have big swordfishes or tunas, and they're just cutting them up right there and kill if you want. I take big chunks and eat them. But I'm used to having a lot of red meat. And I had only a couple of lamb chops when I was there, as far as meat. I was there for 7 days. I did have some of the New Zealand beef with me, 1 jar of it, 1 quart jar, and I didn't eat it until I had to near about the 6th day there, and it was just like fresh. And I had it in the hotel room with ice. Change the ice every day, so it really was, you know. And I turned the refrigeration off, the air conditioning off, so I don't like air conditioning. And I don't worry about mosquitoes, because there are only about 3 that get me the whole time there, and I slept on the beaches instead of and yeah, I just like having a hotel room. I went to the Club Med, because you go to Club Med, you know who you are. You can always find somebody that speaks English there if you need to, and there's always a fallback. If nobody knows you, you know, and you don't speak the language well, something happens to you, it's difficult to get out. So that's why I did that. I slept out on the beach road. It's very enjoyable, but I would definitely take more red meat with me to an island like that in the future. And I did take nut cream. I took nut cream, 8 ounces a day, the entire 7 days, and a little bit of sour cream. I took out my cheese in Florida at the seminar there, so that would save my whole, lower mineral level. And I usually, take a couple of grits of cheese for that. And I had plenty of butter along too. So had everything I needed with red meat, enough red meat. But if you could cool it. Soft, collapsible coolers, change the ice once or twice a day. And it was good. Didn't even sour. I don't know if it's the energy on the island or what. Because here it was sour relatively. there. Even if I left it out all day, it didn't get stopped. Take it out to the beach with it. So I didn't want to dehydrate out. And I took a big batch of my primal facial body cream, which I use for sunscreen because it is hot. We're closer to the sun in the winter because 3 million miles closer to the sun, so it's much more intense. That's why in South America, when it's summer there, it's much hotter than it is here in the sun. So I'm near the equator, so it's very intense sun. But one day that I didn't put it on before I went out to the beach and got in the salt water, which pulls the fats off the skin, that 1 2-hour period that I spent in the ocean water playing with balls and kids, I burned. So that 1 2-hour period. Because I didn't use the primal facial body. I used it every other time. At that time I didn't. So I burned a little bit here, a little bit here.
You mean a formula that you do in
Yeah.
What were the native girls like?
Well, the natives have been moved off of all of the islands except for one, just like in Hawaii mainly. The true natives, the natives who belong to those West Indies islands were put on an island. Most of the black people lived there who were slaves, and Eastern Indians. So those are the two cultures there. And you talked about minorities. The whites are a minority. You're lucky if you're 5% of the population. And the blacks and mulattoes, Indians, the whole workforce. And they're very sociable and nice until you start going back into where they live, and then not very nice. It's like, why are you driving through my neighborhood? And I go everywhere. I like to check out everywhere. And I've never really been in the minority. I haven't been to Africa yet. I'm sure I'd be a minority there too. This is the first time I was.
What was the native diet?
They were like the pictures that I've seen, I didn't see any of them in person, but they look like a cross between, they look a lot like Polynesians. Darker, maybe more black, and of course Africa is they were Cajun, French and black. So they called it Creole.
Did you try to convert them?
Pardon?
Did you convert them?
Pardon?
Did you convert them?
No, he couldn't
Like I
speak
said, I
French.
couldn't speak French well enough.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And boy, if you go to an island like that, French, you better try to speak French. They don't like you at all. But if you try, even if you don't do well, you're very good. Very good. Okay, now we'll start with questions. Does anybody have any questions about all that?
What kind of fish were you doing?
There were all kinds. Dolphin, swordfish, tuna, thing called fluke. That's what they call it in Creole. I don't know what it was. But it was like a purple blue meat fish. Very tasty.
They were all good. All good.
Also fresh right off the boat.
You had to ask around to find out, or did you
It was very easy.
find the docks and all that? I went to Aruba and there's none of the food there.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably, I didn't see any docks, but that's good. What? I went to Aruba and it's a desert and there's no good food, everything's imported. But obviously that was part of that.
Well, yeah, your inhabitants of the island fish every day and sell it, cut it right up there. There's a whole market area. different towns, they have their market areas. And I was in St. Anne, and it was a large market, several fish areas. They didn't this time because I arranged it with the chief of the, we call him the chief, well, Ned, but he went on vacation. He was on vacation when I got there, so it was 3 days. But the last, when I did a commercial for them in '92. So they gave me 8 days and 8 nights in Nassau, Paradise Island. And they kept all of my food in the refrigeration, but like I said, I kept it in my room this time. The cafeteria was much farther than it was.
They could give discount for not eating that food.
Oh, I went in, let me tell you, they had nice brown eggs, and I took, I'd take 6 to 9 raw eggs and put them in a big, glass, and that's what I'd have for breakfast. In there, Yeah, a big bowl of eggs, with a boiling pot where you could put them in there and you could poach them, or you could hard boil or soft boil. Otherwise it was raw eggs sitting there every morning. Had that. And I was. Pardon? Yeah, I was drinking some cream before I went down to get the eggs. And I was always able to get their fish too. But I go out and buy my own too. It's never enough, because I would eat fish. And then one night they had the swordfish and the tuna, and I went and got about 4 pounds of fish. And I ate that one sitting. Well, I ate about 2.5 pounds that evening, and then the next morning I ate the other 2.5, because that was on my trip home. And I didn't know what I was going to be able to get through customs. Because I didn't have almost all food to eat to get through customs. Okay, you have a question?
Yeah. And you have said that you can get water is fine, but if they're lighter, they don't want that possible.
Well, it depends upon the herbs. If herbs are fresh and you juice them, they're very potent, they're full of enzymes, vitamins, everything's active. Once you dry it, everything's dead. You can get some minerals from it, you can get some other chemical products from it, but it won't be in a balance. That's why I said in the book, you're going to make a sun tea with it, if it's an emergency type thing. Otherwise, we're in Southern California. The herb's fresh and juicy. But if you're having an herb that is different, that is concentrated, other than parsley or celery, make sure you only have 5% of your juice of the potent one, 5 to 10%. Like cilantro, pull out a lot of metals. If you've got a lot of mercury toxicity, 10% of your juice being cilantro is going to detox you pretty heavily, pretty quickly.
The question was, what about
They're all processed. Liquid herbal extracts. They're all processed. Processed, distilled, solvent extracted, alcohol, maybe the solvent or petroleum, like breakthrough.
Even probiotics, that they talk about, the probiotics of the friendly bacteria, which is kind of like the herb, that is also dry and not alive.
If it's dried,
So if
It's
it's
not
in a
alive.
powder form, it's dry.
that's right. It's not active, it's not alive. And it will take a lot for your body to rehydrate that herb just to get a little bit of something out of it. Remember, we don't have those enzymes to break down cellulose. Our enzymes and digestive juices are for meats, for animal products. It takes an herbivore to break down those herbs, vegetation products. Suzanne?
Yeah, what have you found often tends to be the priority for a lot of people when they have cancer in terms of the diet? What tends to be the top priorities?
As I said in the first book, 65% of my cases of cancer reversed with fats alone. Using proteins alone, very few of them recover. So fats are a major issue with almost all disease with cancer. It's important. Just remember that if you've got toxins in your body, when you have cancer, you've got to build up a lot of toxins everywhere in the body. And it's a breakdown of the liver. The liver's not digesting fats properly to make the cholesterols bind and to dissolve dead cells, so they just keep collecting in the body. So you're in a dangerous situation. Fats are so important to bind with those poisons, dissolve those poisons. If you don't have them, guess where the poisons go? Right into the cells. Weaken your cells, damages the chromosomes, may not recover. Thin people do not recover. People who stay thin do not recover. Alonza, would go from, 82 pounds when she was vomiting and started to discharge tumors. But as soon as that cycle was over, I didn't think she was going to live 5 times. But she made it through, 92 pounds. Somebody who's 5'2" and 82 pounds. 82 pounds. No, she went down to 68 one time. 68 pounds. Teenagers. A little child, 12 years old. And then she would gain all this weight, go up to, 5'2", up to 140, 160 pounds. So she would put it on when she had to. The people who reverse their illnesses quickest on this diet allow themselves to get fat. Those who don't move very slowly, especially my actors. They want to stay slow. Sure, their blood will stay stable and they'll have more energy. But when they have a breakdown in detoxification, they don't get through it easily and they'll recover easily. It lingers, because they don't have that excess fat to protect them. So it starts damaging their cells, the live cells, weakens them, makes them irritable, unhappy. So fat is the most important of all fats. If it's doing a disease mainly dealing with the nerve tissue, cream is the best. If it's dealing with any other part of the body, butter is better. If it's balance of nerve and other parts of the body, then an equal amount of butter and cream.
Yeah, when I drink juice with a lot of celery, I get pretty bloated, and I notice sodium does that to me too, so I don't know if this has to do with sodium and celery.
Well, what happens is, were you a big salt eater?
I never craved salt, but I definitely like sweet.
Usually that occurs in people who have an allergy to sodium, salt, and it stores in their body from all the years of having had the salt. So you have all these salt storages throughout the system, crystal. And whenever you take the sodium in the celery juice, it starts breaking it up. So it causes edema. And the reason it causes edema is because you'll have a clumping of sodium ions. And when the sodium clumps, it passes the cell. Cells eat by ionization. They have 1 and 2 ions as their stomach. When they need to eat, they'll attract, let's say, a potassium ion, usually carries some kind of glucagon or glycogen with it, and it can get its sugar that way. Sodium, that usually carries H2O with it. So if the cell opens to draw in some sodium to get the H2O, the clumping, the magnetism of the ions outside the cell is so great that it rips the ions, it magnetizes the ions, and rips the guts out of the cell. The cell can no longer eat, it shrivels like a raisin. And that all this excess fluid stays in the blood serum and does not get into the cells. And that causes the heat swelling.
That's from salt or that's from celery?
That's from the salt in your body, sodium pulling those salts out, getting recycled into the blood again. And then it would be done.
And what happens to that cell?
That cell's dead.
So when you're drinking a celery juice, it's shriveling up the cell, or?
Well, it can. It depends if you have, if you're drinking it, if you have, the body will usually regulate itself. That's normally what happens when you put sodium in the body, salt in the body. If you're using high sodium foods like tomatoes, watermelon, or celery juice, which is high in sodium, it doesn't cause a clumping, even though it's concentrated in sodium. It will start pulling that out. When that happens, very few cells are affected that way with the clumping, because the celery juice or tomato juice or watermelon juice will keep it from clustering.
So is it healing the damage to regular salt base somehow, or is it?
Well, when it comes out, the body will try to keep the salt from clumping. And try to disperse it and then throw it out the kidneys and then out the bladder. Some will be perspired if you exercise. Some of them will be gotten rid of that.
So is it better to continue using the juice or to cut back on it?
Are you discomforted by it?
Well, it's not painful or anything, but you can't wear your clothes,
Then, go into a sauna or a hot bath or exercise and perspire it off. But, the quicker you get it out of your body, the healthier you'll be. Salt salt storage is in the body with your worst cravings. Force you to crave, cause you to have cravings for candy, for carbohydrates, for starches, starch carbohydrates, more water, all kinds of things. Salt imbalances the whole chemistry.
So celery, tomato, and watermelon is good to flush that out.
Yeah, but if you have watermelon, you better eat a lot of cream. If you're having tomatoes, you should always have some cream. That way, if the sodium ions are clumping, you have the fats there to help bind them and reduce its magnetism ability, magnetic ability.
So don't have tomatoes without clay.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying most of the time. That's it, have cream with tomatoes. If it's
Butter is
available.
also okay.
Pardon?
Butter is also okay.
It's okay. It doesn't work quite as well as cream.
How
Yeah.
about yogurt?
That will be okay.
If you eat too much cream, it becomes
Well, it depends upon the system. I was drinking 16 ounces of cream a day. But, this is usually my exercise. And I have 8 ounces a day with putting on a normal amount. A couple of, a pound every couple of days as I'm building up in my weight. But when I was exercising, on the island, which I never do, I was drinking, 16 ounces of cream a day and just maintaining my weight. When I went up on that trapeze, I was 190 pounds. That's a lot of weight. The guy who was 6'1", he was 190 pounds. And he was going to catch me. I didn't trust him.
Every time you eat tomatoes, how much cream are you supposed to eat per day?
It depends. If you're having a quart of cream, a quart of tomatoes a day, you need 3 ounces of cream. Like that. Well, say 28 ounces of tomatoes, 3 ounces of cream. Makes it clear. Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, will the diet allow your cartilage to regrow? Because I had some of my cartilage, my knee removed years ago.
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering, just by being on the diet, will that cartilage ever grow back?
Yes, especially if you eat a lot of fowl with a little bit of fish. Concentrate on that, put hot water bottles around it, do that. Or you can just have plastic for it.
No, I
Yes, it will grow back and you encourage it. Remember that if you put hot water bottle at an injured area or area where you want regeneration, the heat forces more circulation. More circulation means more nutrients to that area. So that area will be a focus of healing with hot water bottle. No heating pad, that's electromagnetic field, and that'll alter the molecular structure of cells. And
You said about the hot water bottle. Can I put it right in this area, the hot water bottle, gently
well,
high?
because cancer, basal cell cancer is very acidic,
Uh-huh.
if you put it here, it might start burning because it'll perspire with it.
Okay.
So it's better to have it over here.
Oh, okay, and that's where actually it feels better on it. I put
Yeah.
it on my ear and it feels so good. I put it here and I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had the same problem when I had cancer on my face.
Okay.
Different kind of water on
Well, I don't like these because it's a synthetic material. I just found a company that actually makes rubber hot water bottles. So they take a lot more heat without falling apart, without breaking. Have you ever been in bed and a hot water bottle break on you? Well, I have many times. Especially Lori liked to have those things cooking. And it says 140 degrees max. She put 160 degrees in there, burn herself.
From the faucet, it gets
Right. Well, yeah, depends on how hot you have the hot water heater turned on.
You know the other name or the number of that?
I will have it for the next time. And they're all rubber. They smell like rubber, of course. They smell like burned rubber when you first put hot water in them. So what I do is I'll fill them up a couple times and leave them outside for about 3 weeks before I use them. Just cut down on the rubber odor. But it just smells like a rubber tire, at first. And then, in a few months, it dissipates, the smell dissipates.
James was going to bring a truck over here to sell people stuff if they really need it. He's busy working. We should have desperate for stuff.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if there's only 2 people, you can go to the regular markets and get it.
Can you get us stuff up?
310-664-0630. James Stewart. 0630. Okay, now I'm going to have to do this. Go, James.
At least you're in town.
Yeah. Okay, what, do you have a question?
I have one on dentistry.
Well, you live here, you don't get a question.
No, I was wondering, I was told I have a filling, and I asked the guy about it, and I was told, well, if you let it go, the bacteria will eat through and eventually get your nerve. And I think you have a different opinion about that. But my thought was this: if you have something wrong with the tooth already, is it the same theory that the bacteria is doing something to that already damaged material, or is bacteria actually eating away at your tooth?
Well, you've asked a very large subject. I'm not going to go into it fully. If you have, let's say, a composite that's plastic, it sets off dioxins and phthalates. It causes bacteria to grow underneath, also causes a recession of gums, also causes a recession of nerves. Composites are not good things to put in. Plastic fillings. Get inlays or onlays, which are porcelain or ceramic. Those are the things to use. With crowns too, with your facials, crowns. They only make that in crowns.
But there's metal under that.
Yeah, that's to reinforce.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's gold.
If you can.
Yeah, you should ask for gold.
You asked
You can get gold, or you can get a combination of gold and platinum, which
Yeah.
is stronger than the gold alone. Yeah.
The composite's definitely not
Not good. And of course, if you have amalgam fillings, that's 50% mercury. And that poisons the nerve all the way back. I thought, oh, I had all my amalgams removed in 1978. They left my teeth gray. There wasn't a tooth in my head that didn't have absolutely. I've only seen young people repair their teeth on this diet. They're so toxic, it takes 40 years to get well. Teeth are the hardest place to. If you have no circulation going on the outside, the only way you can feed is from the in. Bones on the inside, it takes 7.5 years to replace every cell of bone at one time. But you've got circulation coming from every direction in the teeth. You don't have that restorative ability. Pardon? Well, they can be damaged, severely damaged from all the mercury in the amalgam. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that just shows that your nerves are not strong yet. Now, while my teeth dangled after the chemo and radiation, it deteriorated all of the bone around my teeth, so my teeth just dangled. Very sensitive and sore. If I went like that, I'd lose a half a cup of blood at a time, so I had to drink everything to a straw. And they wanted to pull all my teeth, and I said, well, I'm going to die in a few months. I'm going to die with my teeth. So, going around for 21 years old, and going to lie to my cat. I wasn't going to do it, and it took years, but the raw cheese really helped me stabilize.
You have to swallow it whole.
Pardon?
You have to swallow it.
Oh no, I blended the butter,
What, the cheese?
the cheese, yeah. Basically it's my cheesecake. Half butter, half cheese. A little bit more butter than cheese sometimes. And I have it warm and drink it to a straw. And after about a year and a half, bones grew back, stabilized within about 6 years. I still have most of my teeth. I only have, one here missing. And this one is almost completely deteriorated. That one's taken 20 years to deteriorate. And no decay. Every time I go to the dentist, there's no decay there. It's just that the acids keep dissolving in the tooth because it's open. There's no teeth to stop it. The acids in my mouth are breaking it down. But there's no more decay. Oh no, milk and cream are fine. No, it's, the acids from my brain. Everybody has a very acidic brain because we've been eating cooked foods, cauterized minerals. There are a lot of the metallic minerals in the body are in the nervous system because that helps the transmission of information. So most of your toxic free radical poisons are in the nervous system, in your brain, and most of that comes out your throat, mouth, your phlegm, your sinuses, your eyes, and your eardrum, and your earwax. So it discharges out here, so intense acid, intensely acidic in those metallic minerals, discharging to the gums. So you have so much plaque. And, every time you drink more milk, it attracts more of the poison metals. Those poison minerals into the gums to discharge out the gums. So that's why you keep having plaque and plaque. And you will for, at least 40 years. Next question. Barbara.
Yeah, but
All meats have salt in it, and because I'm so sensitive to salt, that whenever even if I have a little bit of sashimi, or red meat especially, chicken, even plain, because I don't even use sauces, because I thought it was the sauces that made my mouth burn. But it's the meats themselves. They burn my mouth. Is that okay?
Well, that's the acid in the meats.
Yes, the acid.
Acid minerals.
Yeah.
In meats, yeah.
So like other people eat a lot of it, and they don't get bothered by it.
That's because they didn't have radiation there. Radiation therapy causes everything to go twice as acidic. It even transforms some of the naturally alkalinizing minerals into acid minerals.
That's why everything I eat.
That's why every time you eat something, it'll start discharging more of the poisons out the gums, out the tongue, the lips,
And
and
my
the
whole
breath.
body starts itching too.
Yeah. Same thing with mine. Like I said, I used to have cracks this long all the way down to here. My mouth was just bleeding, cracks all the way up into here. You see some of the scars.
But you continue eating it even though you have these symptoms.
There's no way to stop. I just constantly put cream, and just hold cold cream in my mouth just to soothe myself.
So that I'm not going to eliminate eating chicken and fish because
If you do, then you're not going to get well. You're going to get radiation.
So continue, keep on trucking on.
Yeah. Mine was a little bit worse than yours. You don't have that. You have the heavy buildup of dead cells, dead tissue here from the dryness. You know, the cracking. I had chemotherapy because cells. It damages the vitamin K and vitamin U, so it prevents proper clotting. So just open tears over the nose.
Yeah, I have this friend that he has cancer, and he can't swallow anymore. He has a tumor in his throat, so he can't even drink water. And he has this tube that feeds directly into his stomach. And he's lost 40% of his body weight. So he's pretty, the question is, do you think that could be survived? And is there a food that women can eat to make their breasts stop sighing? These are questions that
Where can you get it? Answer that one first.
That's two questions.
What was it?
Two parts to it.
Can we vote on which one
Not
he gets
two parts. I have a few clients who are being fed through tubes and they're doing very well because what they'll do is blend with, the foods and then feed them, the meat. They'll blend it with, they'll grind it up into a pate and then blend it with milk and butter or cream and then, because then they put it in with a syringe, so they just shoot it into the stomach, and then you wash it down with milk, not with water.
Yeah, they're using doctor food.
Pardon?
They're feeding him doctor food.
Yeah, but I'm saying you can, he could get well if you could do that. Yeah. That would be the only chance. Usually when it's here, it's not. In the lungs and here, it's not an easy case. You start choking off the larynx, esophagus. It's difficult. As far as women, let me tell you, these French girls, French women, I saw them 80, 86 years old, topless. All on his island.
Was it nice?
It was nice because you could see how much the sun kept their breasts up.
What's sun?
Sunlight was so important. Well, the French, you eat a lot of cream and butter in their sauces. That's why they can drink so much wine and not be damaged by it. Because they eat all this fat. They're used to their culture of very rich sauces. So that kind of fat in the sun rays allows that. 86 years old without hardly any sagging. It blew my mind. How many of these women, you can tell they had quite a few children, and their breasts were, like I see in, late 20s, early 30s here. They're 50, 60, 80 years old. It was just amazing to me. They had no qualms. There were girls that were going around selling, clothes on the beach, and they would just take everything off and just, right there. They don't have any of these, bare body hang-ups. And, they'll just strip completely. Bare, testicles, everything, and change your clothes right on the beach. It's only for a few seconds. But there's no, there's no reluctance about it, no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no hostility. It's just, everybody does it. It was so refreshing to be in that kind of culture.
How much fast cooking or butter or French cheese you do? Now, so that that is wine.
Yes, you can. Not suggesting it, but yes, you can.
What's the wine?
Yeah.
Have more cream on
Cream and butter before you drink it. See, they usually drink the wine as they're eating their dish. It's always got heavy cream or butter in the meal. So they're sipping the wine as they're eating this butter. Well, not anymore. Well, let me put it this way. There are a lot of French chefs that use raw still. They still use raw. France was the easiest place for me to get raw cream, raw butter, and raw milk. Right there in the store.
Well, there's actually a French-style restaurant in this new shopping center called Grove. And in there they have a list of 30 or 40 different cheeses, and about half of them are raw. Well-known cheeses.
Are they salted?
No, I don't think so.
Most of them.
But they're raw milk.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of it. It's in the Grove. Yeah.
It's a new shopping
It's next door to the Farmers Market on Fairfax. Off Fairfax. Third.
Yeah, but most of it's salted.
Yeah, it's all salted.
Yeah.
It's not
The
salted.
government, the U.S. government won't. It has to be pasteurized or salted.
But they're French cheeses, and they're all raw milk.
Why do they like having the salt? Or why do they okay it when it has salt?
The salt is an antibacterial.
Is the answer fats and sun?
Pardon?
Is the answer fats and sun?
Fats and sun. Also, if women will do an exercise like get to a counter like this one, everybody can see. And if you spread your arms out like this, and you don't have to go far, and you go like this, it brings the circulation in to the mammary glands. And it isn't hard.
Did I do it
Closer. As many as you want. When you start feeling it, you know that the rush of circulation is going in there. It'll start breaking down dead cells that cause the sagging, and it'll strengthen the muscles in there. I've seen girls go from sagging down here to go up to a full 2.5 inches up in 7 months from doing that every day, about 50 of them. Not all at one time. They may do 10 at a time, 5 times a day. It's the questions you ask. That's what I'm talking about. We're not talking about young girls. We're talking about old girls too. And let me tell you, a lot of the young girls nowadays have as much saggy breasts as older women because of the terrible diets. More chemicals, more pesticides, more preservatives, more ways of cooking and processing the food than was when I was a child. When I was a child, in 1947, when I was born, that was arrow and canned foods and processing really took hold because of World War II. And from then on, it's got worse. And by the time 1970 hit, that was the biggest phase of more and more chemicals. Early 70s.
Any progress in getting a true raw cheese from the market?
There is Morning Land that you can get from James.
Do you get it in the market too?
No, it's from Missouri. Chris can't get any from it. Can't get any raw unsalted.
Organic pastures.
Yes, Organic Pastures is going to build one. I don't know how long it's going to be, but they will. They are hoping to. They're still working on getting the financing to do it. So the cheese factory is an expensive development. Murray.
Okay. What are the specific benefits from the three different types of tanks? Fish, fowl, and sugar?
Just like those that replace, the fish helps replace the inner elements, the constituents of nerve tissue, the best. The fowl helps the nerve lining, the sheaths, the intestines, the bones, the bone cartilage, intestines, lymphatic system, any of the white glands, connective tissue, skin. Red meat helps blood, the dark glands, liver, pancreas, gallbladder, spleen, bone marrow, and muscles. So when you eat the high beef, it will help degenerate, will help break down, dissolve the degenerative tissue in those particular systems.
Now, would the same apply to other raws like glands and stuff like that? Would that
They'll concentrate on that gland.
Perfect.
And other glands. Constituents of, in other words, the inner workings of nerves.
Both fresh and hot.
Well, the fresh will help rebuild it. The high will help get rid of degenerative tissue in those particular systems. Okay.
Will the high also help rebuild?
Pardon?
Will high meat also help rebuild?
It will help rebuild only in that it helps break down that to be replaced. A lot of people can't break it down. If they can't break it down, they can't replace it. Because all of your cooked foods destroys all the bacteria, all the natural elements and parasites that naturally in every animal cell. And once you cooked it, you've destroyed all of that, so your body doesn't have that natural ability to just have a recycling going on in an ecological system, a balanced ecological system in its own system. By eating the high meats, you're replenishing all of that.
Actually, I have this, I'm having this trip. This trip and travel a lot, and I haven't been decided like I wanted to, because if I go to a fish market or something where I want to buy fish for like a meal, instead of have refrigeration, because I can't get small enough portions. And I'm afraid if I buy it at a rock, it used to be raw. I haven't been able to get myself to eat higher, so they will understand it.
So what you read?
So, how do you keep this on the diet of traveling to able to buy fish or meat, eat it the next day, whatever?
Well, I took jars with me. And I put the meat in the jars. Except for the fish that was so fresh. I wanted to see what it would be like, so I left it 2 days in the car. Unwrapped, exposed to the oxygen, loose plastic bags. Really fresh, no stench even in the car of fish. Amazing. But just put it in jars and you have it in the cooler, you just change the ice. Once you do ice.
In a hotel, you get free ice.
Yeah.
Twice a day, that's right.
Yeah.
You just take a isolated bag. And I freeze 2 bottles of water when I go on the plane. And by the time I get to the hotel, I can drink the water, and then from then on, you just keep changing the ice twice a day. You just pour the water off in the morning, put the ice into the same plane. You've got ice crystals on it all the time.
So when you went on the plane, did they irradiate your,
No.
how did you handle that?
Yeah, right.
You know how they x-ray everything before you go on a plane?
You can go straight to the chief of that particular, chief of security for that particular place where you're going through. Chief will never be there. These are always the lower, and they cannot make the top decisions. So you find the chief of security for that airline, and you go to them. Or you go to the airline and them. I had to do that when I was in Fort Lauderdale. Here in LA, they're used to me. I know who to go to. Everything's easy and quick. But when I was in Fort Lauderdale, leaving there, going to Kuala Lumpur, they weren't going to let me through. So I filed a complaint right in front of them, filling it out, putting their badge numbers and names down, and saying, you know, I get through everywhere else. All you have to do is hand check it. No big thing. Takes you a little bit more time, but it saves my life. If anybody has had an X-ray in their life, they've had radiation therapy. So I tell them I had, and I did have radiation therapy, not just X-rays. I said, I have radiation therapy. If my food goes through here, I will be nauseous, vomiting all over the plane, and vomiting wherever I'm going, and that will ruin my day in life. You know, my vacation, my trip, or whatever. And I'm very humble, very sincere. And if they start saying, no, we're not going to do it, that's when I start writing it down and say, who's your name, who's the president, what's the address. You start doing that. Oh, and I'll also tell them, I said, okay, I need you to put me on another airline. You need to pay for it, and this has to be all the way through. And it has to be right now. It will cost them double, triple to put me on another airline. So guess what they did? They walked me right through. And they inspected everything less than anybody else. You know, so.
You're in the right place.
You know, you just have to be persistent. One time last summer in Alabama, it took me 4 hours to get through one, so I missed 4 flights. You know, but that was the only other place, Birmingham, Alabama.
What about a letter from your doctor stating that? Will that help? Because we have letters. My wife and I got letters for that.
No, definitely help. We still may go through the same thing.
If they x-ray your bag, they have you take everything out and they hand check with that stuff. But they want to send, they put my bag through it, and I didn't want to put my food back into it until I was.
That's okay. I do mine. I take Rex right my bag as many times as they want.
Okay, so they can x-ray the bag, but the bag won't give off radioactive stuff to the food.
Not unless you have metal in it.
Okay.
So I put my, you know, my 128 tool Swiss Army knife in my luggage. It gets checked through. It's in my checked baggage. Not carry-on.
They're x-raying that now.
They're x-raying now, but it doesn't hold through. The process is pretty good. But when they're going through that hand check stuff, it moves so slowly through there, they can't even follow it.
When you hand check the food, have they actually opened the jar?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. What they do is, because I have those metal lids, they'll take them off. Of course, I fill my juice right up to the top. And all over. And then they put out the lid, they take their metal detector, make sure there's no metal inside this jar.
One time they had
Who knows? But, you know, it's true. I mean, I could have, you know, a metal,
Razor.
fire cap, you know, to a bomb inside one of those jars. I don't give a shit as long as I get it through.
Well, is it better to check their bag through or than send it to the ambulance luggage? In other words, instead of carrying it on, it's better to check your food.
No, because then it's going to, either way, it's going to be radiated.
Yeah, but not as much radiation.
It won't be as much.
Which will not be as much.
Checking it.
If it's checking it through, it's big, you can check it from the baggage. Especially if you take a case, soft, no metal except for the lids on your jars, that'll go through pretty quickly because they can see what it is and just go through.
Is that okay?
Well, it's quicker than, you know, if you're going to get irradiated, the food's going to go get irradiated and goes through only one time, it'll be okay. But if you're passing it through many times, then your food's going to be destroyed.
So it's okay to do it the one time or go through procedure of security? Not
It's okay. I wouldn't say it's healthy, but it's okay.
It's the lesser of the two evils.
Right.
It's just checking through.
Check.
Does that destroy most of the value of the food?
Which?
Going through the quick way?
Through the quick way, there's less destruction. However, there's going to be some destruction, but it's not going to be poisonous unless it goes through a little bit longer, twice. Then it will be poisonous. Not only some of the nutrients damaged, it will be poisonous.
I think we had a problem with that. That they ran it through when we first got to the terminal, and then they wanted to do it again, which made me needed a little extra nut formula or something. So that's a problem. I think they do it twice if you're going to do it that way.
No, that's if you're taking another airline, from one airline to another.
Well, there's just no Japanese on it. Just the one going. As you walk into the terminal to go to get in line, they hit it there.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, is that it? You know, yeah. Then they come up to the next line and boom, they want to do it again. So
They had two X-rays? You ever run into that?
I don't know, local. I guess locals don't.
Most times when I'm traveling, if I'm not in a hotel, so I don't have so it goes back to that
Did you have a car? That's the easiest. When I have a rental car and not a hotel, I take one of those big plastic coolers. I put a block of ice in there. A block of ice will last 4 days. 4 days. So I have to change the ice every day like I have to in a hotel. Twice a day in a room. And I don't use it over the air conditioner. But in a car, you know, you've got the big plastic cooler with that big block of ice, 7-pound block of ice. I've been bringing out some of the water every day, but I don't have to change it. And you don't want the crushed ice. You know, you want the block. The block doesn't melt quick. How do you get block? Every supermarket here carries it, most of your liquor stores.
Blocks, it's usually a bag of ice.
No, they have blocks.
It's harder to get blocks.
Every place I've gone to, I've gotten one in the past 3 years.
The other thing is that you fit around the block and create the ice cubes.
Pardon?
The ice cubes, you can form them to the food with a block.
Yeah, but you don't want to form. You don't want them to touch the food because they can burn the food.
The ice.
The ice, yeah.
Well, but it's in a
You got
glass
that cooling
container.
block in there, but
It's in a glass container.
so it doesn't matter. If the ice is packed right against it, it should burn the food. Put an ice against you in a cooler and see what it does to your skin. Cause
I wouldn't even want to
frost
be in
burn.
it. I wouldn't even want to be in it.
So block works very well. And there hasn't been a place that I've seen all the way across this country, you know, that doesn't sell block of ice. 7-Eleven, all of them. They have the choice. They don't have many of the blocks. They have a lot of the crushed ice or the ice cubes, but they all have the blocks. Just have to ask for it. You'll see.
I've been to Bill Armstrong in Juneau, has been there. Bill Armstrong, so, I mean, getting out prices here, and I bought a cooler with me and ice, and I didn't eat all the raw, river, but, you know, a couple days later, I just threw it out, and I didn't know how long it's going to keep it.
Well, you saw me on Ripley's Believe It or Not, I ate it for a year and 3 months. And the last 6 months wasn't even in a cooler, it was on my back porch.
You're so good.
Very good. No cooling at all.
Yeah, but you only eat a little bit of it, right?
You know how much I ate on that freaking show? Usually I eat just a little bit, but when I'm on that show, I ate a full cup. Because they had me eating so much. So I ate a full cup of a lot of that stuff.
And did you detox?
Pardon?
And did you detox?
Because
But it might to somebody else, right?
Pardon?
And it might to somebody else.
Don't know, might. But you don't want to eat that. Just eat a little here and a little there.
But she's saying she had like a whole meal or something.
July.
You don't
No
want to eat
food in
it.
there in
Right?
July.
Is the golf ball size the right amount?
Well, it depends upon the individual, anywhere from ping pong ball to golf ball.
Like, I just chop the meat up and let it just dry out, and it smells for 1 minute, and then I eat it, just carry it in my pocket. That's just,
Not
as,
as healthy.
what do you mean it's not as healthy?
Because it's starting to dehydrate, destroying a lot of the enzymes, bacteria, once it's dehydrated. That's why the Eskimos and the American Indians, when they made pemmican, they didn't eat it unless they had to. Dried meat was not something they liked, because it wouldn't help regenerate cells. It would give them energy and help them maintain and last, but it would not cause them to fry. So they would make a big batch of pemmican every year. If they didn't eat it by springtime, they buried it. They wouldn't eat, they don't eat jerky, unless they have to.
So if you want the meat to go room temperature in the refrigeration, put it in a jar.
Jar and then a dark cover. Or put it in a, container that keeps the light out, put it in your car and make it very warm.
You're talking about travel now, right?
Talking about any time.
You don't put your meat in the refrigerator?
Up until I'm ready to, the night before, I'll take it out and put it in a cupboard or put it in my car so it'll be very warm by the time I get to eat it. It's flat, it's tasteless. It's warm, it's especially really warm.
Yes, this is a question about next steps. We have our grandchildren.
You got a shotgun?
I'm looking for one. Yeah, they just have, and it's not only about raw food, but anything that's healthy. And so you can't make any certain things you can do with subterfuge, but basically, we got them off the McDonald's and pizza, and drank really a lot of nice stuff, but they won't eat any vegetables. They won't eat protein fruit, nothing. Would supplements be something that would be helpful if they're not including anything in their food?
Yeah, but, most kids will eat milkshake.
They don't realize only one of them,
Well, force them. You're in my house. I have to deal with your emotions. You want me to help you. Help me, help you. And that's what I tell almost all my parents. I have parents that are, went through a heavy change with their children. And every mother that's gotten their children to do it 25% within a year, they're 50% within another year, they're 75% because the kids naturally move toward it. But you have to start them giving them, one meal a day. Is that way?
I can't really do that because there might be custody issues. They might just go off food
Do you think they're going to go or somewhere else rather than be with you over that?
No, I mean,
But if they say it to the authorities, they will come in and say, they're out of
in
here.
other words, they might want them back.
Yeah, but you were not talking about raw meat. You're talking about a raw milkshake. Now, I've got all the evidence in the book to prove that raw milk is a benefit, not a harm. Pasteurized milk is a harm.
One of them
But it
will
ain't-
No, we get around, we just took keep a bottle of the right of the bad stuff. and just-
But I mean, you mix the egg with it and everything else.
Yeah, I got that.
any vegetables.
Okay, children shouldn't be eating
They
it.
shouldn't? Could you make it into green cheese and add some kind of sweetener to it? Like not,
But as long as you force them to eat at least one good raw meal a day with egg and cream and
So one milkshake a day.
will help them. And you'll see they'll adjust as you go along. Then, you can make them eat too. Like most of the parents that I have, they force them, they have a milkshake in the morning and a milkshake at night. That is it. They have to do it. If they don't like it, they can go live in the street. Parents say, and they all do it.
He's different. He's fighting me again. So just the least time changing, unbelievable. I'm not doing it, but going back there, much calmer. Amazing.
And you see the adjustment. It's a big difference.
When my kids were little, I was doing Vera broth, injury across the belly.
Right.
And my kids would not eat vegetables and I was so aggravated. So one day I made a meatloaf and I put the Vera broth in the meatloaf and the meatloaf came out green. My kids have kids of their own now and they still didn't They hated me.
You have to realize that kids don't, the whole digestive systems are growing and developing. Vegetables for them is not good and healthy. Vegetable juice is, vegetables is real to the digestive tract. So it'll be even worse.
That should be a should not try to suffer. How about the green
I
tea?
don't think so. Pardon?
Green powder, green powder, green apple.
Yeah, and that's all dead. We talked about that. One of the first things we talked about is dry dead substance.
But somebody just told me that the fiber of the vegetable would give you, take away constipation.
Take away constipation, but also destroy your ability to digest and synthesize B vitamins and amino acids in the bowel. I'd find a different way. Like with the seeds, you're using psyllium or flax seeds, they're still acid. You put it with cream or butter, butter's a little bit more acid. So you use that as your anti-constipation rather than green, fresh vegetables. Because that's alkaline. That will destroy the intestine. Okay, so no, I wouldn't suggest that they're getting at least one raw meal a day in the form of a milkshake with an egg in it. Any supplement's going to be harmful. If they had absolutely zero zip, it might do some difference.
What's up with
Anything that's a digestive enzyme.
Oh, digestive enzyme. With the
For children who are not eating anything but cooked foods.
not for always.
Give them some of that pie you had here tonight. That was incredible. They don't like it?
Do you have
Oh.
You have me eating
You're too thin, you don't get an answer.
You have me eating that formula every 3 days in place of my morning meat meal.
3 to 4 days.
Every 3 or 4 days. In place of my morning meat meal. But you told me to
Not in place of the meat. With a meat.
Well, I have a taste for it.
Oh, it's supposed to be with.
Okay.
Listen to it. I may have made a mistake. I do that
I think you
sometimes.
made a mistake.
With an eat.
Okay, so I don't mix that morning meat. I just have it with it. Oh, God.
Oh,
I
you
have
start
such a
over
hard time
again.
getting it down as it is. It's not tasty nauseous. Really not.
I don't know.
But you said cut my moisture formula in half. For that meal only, or for the entire day?
For that day.
So we should always
Instead of
have...
having the moisturizing,
Half.
instead of having the moisturizing formula with your meat in the morning, you have the nut form.
So I just take half.
Half of the nut form.
And make half portion of the moisture formula and have it later.
Correct.
Why can you so long eating them?
Could be your digestive tract. Your liver's not digesting and utilizing as well. Or you're so toxic, your body's using all the nutrients to dump. Your skin looks so much better.
I just got lunch.
I noticed that Suzanne, both of you have thin problems.
Well, I mean, in my case, I didn't want to do it at all. So I started to cut in addition to...
He has been having a lot of cream. I even had to put cream in my juice.
Well, I'm just saying that was my experience, that's all. I'm just saying that was my experience.
I mean, I love life. I'm like, I'm running around the house loving life because I love my food. And I make custard sometimes, and I eat all this stuff.
But sometimes thin people may take a year and a half until everything starts digesting and utilizing properly and all this other stuff. There's only been 2 people that have been almost eternally thin.
What is it, moisturizer?
Okay. Remember, yeah, Wilson's moisturizer, it's peeling. Those guys do.
What does it mean when you have really hard peels and they're cracked? Real hard.
It's a fat deficiency.
That's bad.
Essential fat deficiency. You've got a lot of dead cells collecting heavy mineral concentration, and they're collecting. Jim?
Well, my questions center around this nut formula, which I think is fantastic. Like, once or twice a week is really great. For one thing, if I make too much of it, is there anything wrong with just putting it in a jar with a lid on and putting it in the fridge?
Yes. There's egg in it. But I put it in the fridge. Leave it out.
For a couple days.
I left it out for as much as a week.
What happens to the fridge?
Never refrigerate eggs. When you put eggs in the refrigerator, it lowers the bacteria level and the enzyme activity. Usually if you eat raw eggs that have been refrigerated, you get undigested proteins into the blood. That's toxic.
So it's better not to eat.
Let them
Even if
wander.
they're fertilized, stored, hold them.
Yeah, I do
Well,
that.
as long as you get them and keep leave them out, the bacteria will grow again, so will the enzymes develop.
How long do we go now? 2 days.
Before you eat, usually 24 hours, unless you put them in warm water. I'll let them in warm water, for a while. And just let them warm up for maybe an hour, 2 hours. No, if they're refrigerated and you want to eat them right away, take this cold refrigerated egg and put it in a bowl of warm water and you let it sit for a couple of hours.
So I can, if I have excess, just put it in a jar and set it somewhere out of the sunlight. It'll be okay the next day.
Yeah. Okay. Celeste.
I had, before being like 34 pounds, I started the diet, and I started experimenting with the weight loss thing a little bit.
Were
And
you astonishing?
I originally, and I gained 34, but I noticed since the time that I started that, it didn't happen all of a sudden. I started living off the fat that was in my body.
Right.
And over time, it did this thing to my nervous system, especially the last little part as I started to get down in weight. I started to get like so stressed out and so like nervous. My libido was like really went down. It just like changed like the way before when I was feeling like really happy, I started fighting with the person I was involved with, and it was just like I went through such a change just from doing that and not having as much fat. So my question was, instead of doing a weight loss, should I just kind of stay with the same thing and cut fat as I wanted to? Because it was amazing to me how much.
When people are thin, I never suggest that they go on a regular diet. Just keep pushing themselves to gain. I don't care if it takes 5 years.
Even after 34 pounds?
No, she gained fine, but I'm talking about some other people like Suzanne. They should just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until they finally develop the weight. Again, the reason for that is that you don't have excess fat and you have poisons in the body. You always have poisons in the body. They'll go into the fat instead of your live active cells. You don't want them there because that's damage. And devil cells. Something else you want? You didn't ask a question.
No, I did ask you, would it be better instead of doing weight loss, just
Continual weight gain.
continue on weight gain?
You can maintain as long as you
By dairy,
maintain
down.
eating the fat.
Or just want to keep ballooning?
You
Like,
want to keep ballooning until you gain enough weight.
but like,
Right now, you're still too thin. You're not on your, you're not even down, you're not even up to your lowest. You've got 10 more pounds, and then from there, at least 12, 15 pounds above that. Then, think about going on a detox, a weight loss. Good. It takes time, sometimes the liver's just not well enough to be able to digest and handle the fats, or you're so toxic that your body's using all the fats to detoxify and burn.
yeah, that's what I started to track towards the end with my liver started feeling like it's still kind of achy. Because last time that was my question, you said put a lemon in my juice.
Yeah.
Pig fat is only something that defines the diet. The only people out there who are
We're talking about thin people, we're not talking about fat people. Those fat people are still healthier because the toxins are going into their fat and are not damaging their cells. They're not feeding those live cells very well, but at least they're protecting them with all that fat. And let me tell you, the people who are happier and more level-headed are the people who are obese that come to me and go on the diet. People who are very thin are the ones that are best.
Even if they got fat from like carbs, bread,
Even if it's from that, those fats still bind with those poisons.
They're not the healthiest.
No. I'm saying usually the person has more equilibrium.
there's no point when it becomes a strain on the heart.
Yeah, it can be. If you don't have enough proteins and you're damaging your cells, yeah, definitely. If you're not feeding the heart the protein and you've got all this excess weight and you're putting stress on the heart, then will damage it, overtax it. Hold on, two little voices at once.
It'll be hard to exercise and that's not a healthy diet.
Oh yeah, it's impossible. It's overstress the heart on this diet. Question you asked?
My question is saying I went to the drugstore and had my blood pressure put down and they went to optimal.
All right.
I've never been on optimal. Well, my husband was so bummed to see it was normal. He had to do it again and again to try to get it to optimal. Never been there. That was pretty cool.
Congratulations. Do you have a question?
Well, actually, I have the opposite problem. I was terrified of being he's going on this program with my husband. Looks like he's feeling myself very overweight.
Stand on that again. You're about 25 pounds overweight.
And so, I've been knowing about this diet for about a year, and I'm been married about 30 years, and I came back to eating meat, maybe like somewhere maybe 2 years ago, so getting I'm going into I am experiencing maybe already menopausal possibly. So, but I just want to feed you and all that. I think I would die if I didn't know now, beyond what I am.
Well, it's doubtful that you need 5 more pounds. 5 more pounds isn't a big difference. The most likely will lose it.
So that was my question, is it possible to get on one of those programs and then instead of...
What I suggest people do is to be on a good healthy diet for at least 6 months before you try to lose the old toxic fat that you have, just so you can stabilize the system.
And that would be maintenance or gain?
That would be maintenance.
That I could do. If I didn't lose any more, if I didn't lose weight from where I am, I could at least say, well, this is my top weight, and I'll stay here
Well,
until I...
most women like you will gain about 5 pounds with this water weight. As the body starts going in and cleaning out, more circulation, more fluid required. So it's not more fat, but it's a temporary water weight.
The other thing that I ask is, I'm we have a lot of trouble with butter. Fat, eating fat is just like so difficult. And I know how much I need it, and yet I'm just,
That means your liver's in pretty bad shape. So eat more cream for a while, cause a little more water retention, and have some butter.
when I think of stuff to be is like 1 teaspoon for the whole day.
Well, that's a start. Do you have a question? Okay.
Oh, no, I didn't hear it all.
Okay, I guess we've gone around the room. What time is it?
I didn't get a question.
4:05.
Oh, Penny, did you get a question ready?
Oh, that's right, you didn't have a question when I answered.
Right.
Do you have one now?
Yeah. Actually, sort of following along
Anyway, it's too late.
from what she said. When I came in, I was already overweight, and I gained another 10 pounds, which got to the point where it was very uncomfortable. I couldn't bend over to get the plan and stuff like that. It just pushed. And it all seems to be basically in the abdominal area, or most of it. But then when I started on a weight loss thing, then I shortly found myself detoxing drastically and had to stop. So now I've been on sort of a maintenance thing and just very, very slowly inching down. But you said at one of the other meetings that I was a classic case of not handling carbohydrates well. And that's certainly true. But then I haven't eaten carbohydrates to speak of for years now. Probably not 4 or 5 years even before I came to you. Not to mention since.
You have to consider that 70 to 80% of the byproducts of those carbs store in the body, according to Columbia University Medical School. Store in the body for a lifetime. If you go on this diet, you can get rid of it. It's going to take 40 years. It's not going to happen overnight. So you're still full of it.
Okay. So then what can I do to support rebuilding without adding more fat on my belly than I've already got?
Well, it's just a matter of when your body's ready to do some detoxification. Then you can rebuild. But like I say, usually it takes 5, sometimes 10 pounds of excess water weight when you start detoxifying. And that's what yours was. It was an extra 10 pounds of water weight.
Well, I detoxed constantly for the first year. And all the time that I was gaining weight. And then when I started on the weight loss, it had subsided a little, and then it started looking again.
But that's not a heavy detox. When you're on, a gaining or maintenance diet, everybody detoxes every day. So I'm not encouraging an intense detoxification. This is a steady detoxification. And at our age, that's what we have to do, just steady detoxification. Once you get well enough to be able to dump a lot of the old fat, then put on, another 15 to 30 pounds of new fat to go in there and dissolve the old tissue toxins. That's heavy detoxification. And that's what I talk about, or hint of in the second book. In the third book, that's what it's going to be about, detoxification, how to do it.
Coming up.
Well, I'm still trying to get my computer together. It's been 4 months now. Probably in the next 2 weeks it'll be together. I'll be able to go back to the book. So it's probably going to be next fall. So it's summer. Okay, you got a question?
First thing I just wanted to know, when I had my surgery, I had a doctor put in and we had a routine kind of surgery. Now I'm feeling, like, the urinate, so later.
How long did the kid?
Oh, that was in 95. That was, now I'm feeling like a pressure on me.
Bladder, urethra?
I know, was it the bladder or the kidneys?
You have to tell me, where's the pain? Is it the urethra? Is it in the bladder? Or is it in the kidney?
Oh, maybe it's a urethra.
Okay, that's just because when they put that catheter up you, it scrapes that mucous membrane lining.
I mean, I'm just feeling it this year, this last 4 weeks ago.
What sounds like is happening is what happened in the circulation increases in the urethra trying to clean out the scar tissue. So that means there's less of a valve, a certain circumference, an area to flow through. So also when it's doing that, mucus becomes much thinner. So the urine, if it's high in ammonia, which it is a tendency to burn the urethra walls. And then it feels like a pressure, kind of a burning pressure. That's the urethra.
One of the quickest questions is, that's everybody that we want to know. Because if a person starts, like a baby was born on a regular SAD diet and was adopted by a raw foodist, how long would it take him to regenerate? Would it still take him 40 years? That's all, 40 years. Would it take him 40 years to be well?
No. It takes, as long as it takes you 21 years to develop. Okay? It takes you 21 years to break it down, another 21 to rebuild. It takes about 40 years. If the child goes on at 5 years old, it's only gotten toxic for 5 years.
No, I'm saying if they were born, when they're a baby adopted by a raw foodist, how long would it take?
Well, it will take as long as that body took to develop. So you figure 9 months in the womb.
No, the mother is on a bad diet, but then they're adopted by a raw foodist.
Okay, listen. I said the baby during gestation was on a bad diet.
That's right.
Okay, because the mother was on a bad diet.
That's right.
Break itself down another 22 months to catch up to rebuild that. So it should take about 6-7 years. If the child is a year old and goes on to a diet.
Car accident.
Pardon?
If the child doesn't get into a car accident
Yes.
or some other thing.
Yeah.
So in other words, they...
That's what Richard Dreyfuss said to me. I was in the British American Drama Academy in 1993 at Stanford, and Richard Dreyfuss, Marshall Mason, and Ann Jackson were our professors. And we're sitting at lunch, and I'm eating my raw stuff, and being particular, and Richard Dreyfuss, he was right across me, he said, "You're going to eat it like a bus. All this for nothing." But at least when I'm alive, I'm not depressed, I'm not unhappy like you. That's great.
That should have shut him up. I've known a psychiatrist for years.
6 or 7 years if they live.
Yeah.
If they don't get hit by a bus.
You've asked a lot of questions already.
How about one?
Yes, Jim, go ahead.
These body movements like Tai Chi or yoga or stuff like that claim to open up certain channels. Now, how does that actually work?
Okay, if we're not mobile and we've got congestion in the system, you can all kinds of nerve networks that will clog. It's like having a bridge that gets overgrown, it starts falling apart, and it's no longer utilizable. When you start doing movements, it brings the circulation in, and if you're eating properly, you can rebuild those bridges, those canals.
Faster.
Yeah, from doing those Tai Chi movements, yoga, any of them.
Are they better than just normal exercise, running around and playing sports or something like that?
Or doing
Depends on
running.
what sport you're doing. If it's a sport where you're lifting weights, same position, it's not as good as...
So just general exercise is probably better than...
Aerobic exercise.
Is that what you're saying?
Whatever your enjoyment is, whatever you enjoy doing as your exercise, that's the exercise. Then if you want to achieve something more, then go to something else. And hopefully you'll like it. It's fun.
I had a half a glass of milk before, and now I can hardly breathe. Is that okay?
It's causing swelling. What milk was it?
That milk right there, you know, the raw milk,
Yeah, but how long had it been out?
it was warm.
Yeah, but for you it may take more hours to build up in the bacteria.
But it's like every time I do this at home, I can't breathe. It fills up with mucus and blood.
Then don't drink so much at a time. I wouldn't drink more than 3 ounces at a time.
And make sure it's more flabber.
Yeah. I've been having the same problem for the last month. If I drink a full cup of milk at a time, I will bloat.
You put 4 ounces, I only have 4 ounces.
How about having just cottage cheese by itself instead of the milk?
We're talking about milk.
I know that.
No, I need to know what. So I would still continue with the milk though, because my body needs it.
Right.
But even if just 3 ounces a day and
That's fine.
make sure it's more flabbered.
Correct.
Because maybe that discharge of mucus is good. It might be detoxing.
Oh, it is definitely good. But you said you felt uncomfortable here or
No, here.
Oh, there.
Filled
You
with
were-
mucus. No,
Yeah.
I'm
Holding your
sorry.
hands here.
No, I'm sorry. I meant here.
Oh.
You know what happens when you have gray hair?
Barbara, you can't even lift your arms up anymore.
No, it's here. My nose is, I mean, I'm nasal. I can hardly talk normal.
I wouldn't worry about the milk.
It's okay. Just keep doing it.
Because you want those minerals there to attach to that radioactive minerals here.
So discomfort is the word.
Well, discomfort is something you will have to tolerate in your situation.
Gotcha.
Okay, folks, we did it.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you.